Why are you in a t-shirt? It's literally -2.
Because I'm too hot.
I am split in two. 50% of me hates you with an unrivaled, bilge-worthy, awful hatred. And the other half of me hates you just a little bit less than that.
Well, that's where that's how you know you love someone.
That's how you know you love someone.
It's a start. Yeah.
Have we been recording this whole time?
Yeah.
That's mad. I guess that's what you call podcasting.
That's This is podcast.
Now this is podcasting. I'll try spinning. That's a good trick.
Right. Good morning, evening.
Hello,
good night.
everyone. Welcome to another episode of ATT. We have Kyle. He's being an atheist again. So let's get right into it.
Once again,
so this is gonna be an episode 0 of sorts.
Bonus material.
Of a series. We've got actual video. It's not gonna cut out this time. Ben. Yeah, so that's cool. So there's gonna be episode 0 for an ongoing series with Ben, myself, and Kyle, talking about topics that we sort of brought up on the one before this. Topics such as anything to do with like science and religion, how they interact, and all the questions you could possibly think up of how those could mingle. But yeah, so I think we should start off with give a brief explanation of who each one of us are, because I don't think you can't really understand someone's point of view or argument unless you understand how they got to that stage, if that makes sense. So
Yeah, your experiences.
we're gonna start off with how were you brought up,
By a man and a woman.
not always.
yes. How are you brought up?
No, he
you
was-
know what
he was brought
what
up
are your
by rats
defining
and
experiences? What was your story arc? How did you get here, essentially? But do you want to start, Ben, Kyle?
Yeah,
Josh, do you want to start?
I don't mind.
Yeah, you're
Okay,
Mike
let's
Hogan,
play.
so I'll let Josh start.
That's
and then
Yeah, Josh, you're clearly the big daddy. You start.
Okay. Big Daddy Josh.
that is my top search of the
That's
day.
not
My
Title
name's
of the episode.
Josh Young.
Josh is Stephen Young.
I've been brought up in a Presbyterian household, and a practicing Presbyterian household since I was born. Have a few older siblings, brothers and sisters, both of them. I suppose when I got to maybe teenager years, or maybe like not even teenagers, maybe less than that, I liked thinking about just stuff. Just think I thought it was interesting to think about ideas. I thought ideas were interesting. I think that was played a big part, and that was my brother-in-law Ricky. So me and him, he's a lot older than I was, maybe 14 years older or so. So since I was a lot younger, we always chatted about things. Maybe it was like science, and he'd be like, "Oh, here, Josh, did you know that there's some suns and they circle each other and they
Just
combine?"
knowledge
It's
is what
super-
sort of
just
crazy
like,
about-
man, be like, "Oh, what's crazy?" Or, "Do you know that there's a thing called infinity?" And like, here's how you draw it. And it's like that's crazy. It's like a super big number. I'm like, whoa, I didn't realize there's a number called infinity. Like really young age.
Yeah.
Okay. That sort of progressed. He was brought up in a Christian household. I don't know how much they practiced it, but he properly converted when he went to uni, and then he eventually fell away from the faith sort of during the time that I knew him.
Okay.
He fell away from it, he became quite resentful, so then he became like an atheist, and then we would argue, or does not even argue, but like discuss that side of things.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. And it got me interested in this whole world of our own beliefs. Why do we believe them? Should we believe them? Is there any basis to believe them? that sort of stuff. What
Yeah.
we're going to be discussing in the future episodes, that kind of stuff. That got me interested in it, and it's probably, if it weren't for my brother-in-law, maybe I wouldn't even be doing this podcast. Maybe I would have been finding something else to do, maybe with music or programming. Who knows?
That's pretty cool.
But yeah, so right now, I suppose, I don't know. So that's lead me up to teenager years, I suppose. I suppose like any old Christian, so-called Christian teenager, when they get
Would you
to
have went to church regularly in your teenage years? Like
ongoing,
ongoing.
my whole life.
Never, okay.
I'd say teenage years or late teenage years. I'd say really late teenage years, I've sort of figured out my faith a bit more, if that makes sense. My beliefs
Yeah, like
a bit more. Obviously understandable. You gotta interrogate a 13-year-old.
you went through the question
You know what I
period.
mean?
if you
Like,
want to call
but
it that.
I think I found something. I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
this is, I understand now. Or if I say I've been practicing my whole life, but like now I'm like, oh, I really see now. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's hard to explain these things.
Would you
obviously,
like
but,
word it like you've became your own perspective Christian rather than just what you've been told?
Yeah, well, the thing is, I don't really like the way. It's not that there's anything inherently wrong with it, but I don't like the way Christianity was sort of taught to me necessarily, or even just the way it's been gone about in just a normal Protestant church, I suppose, or community. There's a lack of like intellectual thought kind of thing. It's very.
This and this.
I mean, it's not. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just, but I wasn't experienced to it. Like nothing. I was shown nothing. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
I had no exposure to it. It wasn't like, oh well, if you're interested, this exists, and you can.
Were you never?
Here's
had that?
here's some things you can go to
Mm.
look up about it. It's like no, all of that I had to find out myself,
Mm-hmm.
or via like.
When would you say you started to delve in deep? Like what age roughly?
Well, I was alright. I was always interested in ideas, as I said.
Yeah.
Teenage years. I suppose a big point was when I first discovered Jordan Peterson. I think I discovered Jordan Peterson before, a wee bit before he got super, like everyone knew who he was.
Did you discover Jordan Peterson, the follower of God, or the man that likes to argue on Channel 4?
That's a good point. Well, I can tell you the one I found interesting. I found his lectures interesting. I didn't really. I don't know what I saw first. I don't think I saw his controversial stuff first.
Okay.
I think it was his lectures I saw first, and then it may have been even. I may have found him before I even got into the whole controversial stuff with like the left wing people and politics and all that sort of stuff. But he sort of opened my mind to a different way of looking at the world, so to speak. So he's got a whole biblical
Series,
lecture
yeah,
series that like blew me away, right? And there's a plethora of like smaller clips of that whole series on the internet as well. And he talks about say like Disney movies like The Lion King or Pinocchio or something, or
he loves stories,
or old
the harp song,
or old like pagan gods, or as I said, the biblical stories as well. This religious aspect. I thought I was extremely interesting, and I hadn't experienced anyone talk about these things the way he did. And you could see that he was right. He wasn't just like there. You could see that and be like, oh, no, he's talking the truth here. It's not like he's pulling the fast one on, and he's also thinking while he's
doing it, yeah,
giving the lecture, so to speak. So it's not like he's not tricking you into believing anything, because he himself, like, he's got faith issues. I wouldn't say he's a full Christian, but I wouldn't call him an atheist either.
He, like, any time I've heard from him, and he likes to say, if he's been asked directly a few times, do you believe in God? And he either says, it would take me a week to explain that, or that's very private. I don't need to say that, and he never gives an answer.
I feel like I know what I've tried to decipher what his reasoning. I think I understand his reasoning.
I can
but,
kind of get.
Yeah, but he's not like out.
I could say he definitely thinks in the way of like with Christianity and stuff. He can see the true benefit of it and the true causes, and especially through the biblical series.
Yeah.
But it's hard. He does have like a bit of a science heart, and I think it's very hard for him just to be like pure faith. I need to believe in this.
Yeah.
It's like a jump that sort of holds him back. But then he can see, and he would say, "I live life as if God exists."
Yeah, which is I act as if God exists, and to act is like pretty much what
which is
believe anyway.
within reason. Is pretty much what
in a
people do.
sense,
Anyway.
But I would say he's a lot more Christian than most people.
Oh,
he's
100%. No, I would say.
But anyway, so I consumed like everything that was on the internet to do with John, to do with his lectures that he gave or his talks and whatnot over a period of 2 years, and then then his like health issues started happening. Once I started,
Was it
but,
2 years ago?
you mind putting your microphone a wee bit closer to your face there?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Like 2 years ago, roughly, wasn't it? Because I remember.
Well, big
that
thing.
would be about 2 years ago.
Yeah, because he
I think.
came. I remember he went on to his daughter's podcast as like his first returning. To be honest
Yeah.
with him, he did look very sick and stuff.
Yeah.
But he had just
No,
written, which is amazing, Beyond
He's
Order
definitely
in
come-
this.
He's
In this.
like he could have easily died
No,
many times, and his wife as well. His wife got cancer,
Cancer, and he was
and his
was
wife.
Ben's a
His
middle
wife
of.
was told, like, there's, like, it was the chances of survival of this type of cancer was like you're dead, you know, and she managed to.
It's just,
She's not dead, and Jordan's not dead,
yeah, like no,
and his family aren't dead. You
We
know,
aren't, and we aren't
his
dead.
daughter,
yeah.
she can walk even though she's got ridiculous autoimmune disorders, etc. And her whole, anyway, it's not an easy life. But anyway, so that I consumed like all his content pretty much over like 2 years. Read his books, and then I suppose recently I was developing my own understanding, if that makes sense. Using the tools he sort of gave me, and that he got his tools
Like an outlook give you to them.
and he's got his tools from like Jung and all the other major psychologists.
There's
and,
the Russian fella he likes,
Dostoevsky, or
that's
the other Russian authors and all that sort of stuff, and Nietzsche and all these philosophers. So it's a good person to learn from because he's learned himself from all these different people. That's a good starting point, But that got me interested in all this stuff more so, and allowed me to develop my own ideas and put my own life in order to actually apply those ideas to my life and help other people. Like I won't get into detail right now, definitely not. But like I've benefited loads of people around my life based on the principles that I've learned through Jordan Peterson.
Okay.
Like in a very active, direct manner.
Yeah, like the Jordan Peterson, the psychologist and life outlook person. I haven't read Beyond Order, but I've read the original 12 Rules. Is like, it is very, very good, and I like more than anything. My outlook from Jordan Peterson is just hold responsibility for who you are.
Clean your room.
Take control and be that. And like I think in today's world, a lot of people don't do that. But I think if you truly take control, you can manifest great things in your own life. And like he preaches that, and it's a great message to give anybody. And I do look up to Jordan Peterson for that kind of thing.
Yeah. Then this is after starting the podcast. I don't know what episode it would have been, but a good few I went in. I stumbled upon a guy called Jonathan Peugeot. So he's a.
This is in your studying Moses.
It
was before
was it?
that. Because
A wee bit before.
You were looking at him and you went, Ben, I find this amazing guy. He just keeps talking about Moses and he thinks the same way as me, and I can't wait to show you to you. And then you decided.
Yeah, I
to come
find this
back
guy
with
and was like,
7
this
essays.
guy. He's talking about he was talking about stuff that I wanted to talk about, if that makes sense. And I was like, he's laid it out.
He was on that wave.
He's on that ball, so to speak, and I'd say he's the next step on from where Jordan was trying to do with his biblical series. But I think that's played a big part of my current faith as well. Getting to the stage where like I actually believe what I'm talking about.
Yeah, with Peugeot, what is his background? Like I've heard of him in that way.
So he's a French Canadian. He's an or Eastern Orthodox Christian. He's an icon carver. He has a YouTube channel. He's one of the figureheads of the
Four Horsemen
meaning
of Meaning.
crisis, or the Four Horsemen of Meaning. But he's a big proponent on symbolism and the mystical tradition side of Christianity. Like, this is what annoys me. Like, I'm reading, like, there's a book by one of the... There's an area in that, maybe I think it was like 300 AD. Don't quote me on this, but like roughly speaking, 300 AD. There's like this area, and they had like 3 fathers or patriarchs or church leaders in that area. And one of them was Gregory of Nyssa, and he's written a book, The Life of Moses, right? And there's the year 300, roughly speaking.
Yeah.
Okay, the split between the Catholic Church and the Orthodox Church was around 1000 AD, roughly speaking, again. And then the Protestant split was a while after that as well. Church heavily unified.
Yeah.
At this point, there's the church, and then there's the heretics who get outcast, and everyone's in agreement of that.
Yeah.
There's no right. So you can't say that these are this is some crackhead. We don't talk about that guy. We don't listen to him. It's like, no, this guy, you listen to him, right? I know he talks about stuff where I would hear Jonathan Peugeot talk about, and someone who's never heard of that side of Christianity before is like, what? A bit suspicious there, that one. I'm not too sure about that. Are you maybe extrapolating or putting your own ideas into this? No, it's plain there. This is in the early days of Christianity. This thought existed. Like the whole ideas of my symbolic interpretations of things. It's not like it's part of traditional Christianity. It's more to the roots than a lot of Protestantism, which is it's part of my culture and tradition. I don't know. I'm very interested in that kind of thought. The earlier aspect of that. There's no mysticism in Protestantism. There's none.
Oh, that's pretty.
And it shows by the way we sort of look at the world. I suppose the way we naturally look at the world. There's this whole side of Christianity that we don't talk about, if that makes sense. Anyway, so that's sort of where I am at the minute. Obviously, I've done the podcast for over a year now.
You've sort of explored.
I study the Bible.
The realm.
I listen to podcasts all the time. I like thinking about things. I write I've got some
mad stuff down.
What are they called? Essays. I've got some essays. Big proponent against materialistic thought, and that's why
symbolism. This corner, materialism. This
yeah. So that's myself. Is there any questions at all?
No, not quite.
Yes, Mr. Young. So this mysticism you talked about, you don't feel there's any mysticism in your sort of upbringing? Do you find that have you found a sense of mysticism in your own kind of study, if you're on like essay writing, your own thinking and your own thoughts? Are you mystified whenever you read something that you didn't quite look?
It allows me to look at the world.
Because for example, when I was reading David, how completely taken aback I was. Yeah. Because last time I read the story of David, I was just like, nice, guy killed a giant. Yeah. But
it's like very.
But next time I read it, it was like.
You're in the story.
I was in the story.
But previously you were looking at, okay, he did this, and this is if you're reading like a method for making a cake, or you need to do this now.
Because that's the thing, I think, sort of the life perspective that I don't have. Yeah. And I can get sort of with this point of view, there's very useful meaning, there's very useful stories to take from this, but it's making that bridge to be like, this is then true.
Well, here's the sad thing about it, Kyle. I'm not convinced a lot of Christians are, even as I said, like this whole neglected side of Christianity allows you to read these stories in the Old Testament. I like just a
Living in
normal,
this sort
like
of fundamentalist view. Like, I think it's almost dangerous, if I'm honest. Like, I do, like, I just, and to think of science as almost an opposition is just not. It's not an opposition.
Can I answer the question? You were like, how do you feel now? You're mystified or whatnot. Thinking about these things, it allows me to look at the world as if I'm actually living in the world, as if I'm part of a narrative, as if not just me, but my ancestors, my fathers before me, my children, who will be, hopefully.
Yeah.
And my whole community from the fields of a Hoggle to a Hoggle, to Ballymena, to Belfast, Northern Ireland, to the UK, to the whole world, or the western side of the world, to the whole world, and then this whole Christian lineage maybe not blood lineage, but like I'm part of the Christian story, so to speak.
Yeah.
Even if maybe my ancestors were like maybe pagans, I'm still part of the Christian story.
Yeah, no, there's a clear lineage through that, and I think we can even look at that in an evolutionary point of view too, that we are part of a great big lineage.
Yeah, but it allows me to, like, I actually think what I'm doing matters, and I can, I can be, I said mystified, so to speak. I can see meaning now.
Yeah,
it's like I'm actually in the world. I'm living in the world. I'm a character in the world. I'm not just a product of past actions, necessarily speaking. And a lot of my life, it sort of felt like that's what it was.
Do you think seeing yourself as sort of a product of something like that is a wrong way to look at the world? And do you think you can't fulfill like your true like meaning and fulfillment of life if you see yourself just as in I'm a product of, say, evolution?
Yeah, if you don't see the world in terms of meaning, or if you don't see yourself as being a part of a story, and if you don't see how you're playing out that story, I don't think you can live a fulfilled life. Like
a lot of the things that you're wanting to ask, I have those exact same questions in my segment when it comes to my turn. Because I mean, as you know, I struggled immensely with the idea of God, not God, evolution, not evolution.
No, I've struggled too.
Blah, blah, those kinds of things. But I do really relate to what George is saying in terms of being a part of a story, being a character of a story.
And part of that story, it's not necessarily just, okay, we're part, like, as you said, David, yes, that's part of our story, but, that's far off country, years ago, how's it relate to us now?
Spot of light reading.
But it's, we can talk about our actual local history. For example, recent Christian history of Northern Ireland, more specifically where I live in Northern Ireland, more emphasised where I live at least, the 1859, I think, revival, right? That wasn't that long ago. Okay, I was doing some research into the 1859 revival of Northern Ireland. Right, there's a church in Hoggle called First Presbyterian Hoggle. Okay, in a Hoggle, Hoggle is a small village right now. 2011 census. There's over 3,000.
It's close to Randallstown, up just off
near hand. Yeah, it's just over 3,000 people in this village. Okay, nowadays. Okay, in 1859, I don't think we have accurate records, but I can assume that there's about 2,000 if we roughly based them. Roughly. Anyway,
had a few food problems since then.
Anyway, but say there's 2,000 people in this village. Okay, small church. During the times of revival, there were 3,000 people not in the church. They couldn't fit in the church. Think about that. Hoggle.
Your place.
Hoggle. You don't even know where Hoggle is.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's this tiny village, and that was not too long ago. And there are people on the streets crying out to the gods. There were prayer nights, prayer meetings every night of the week, and people didn't want to leave, and most of them only ended at like 3 a.m.
Mm.
There was people who owned bars. They were very concerned they were going to go out of business because people were at these prayer meetings. They weren't going to the pub.
But yes, you say it wasn't that long ago, but the great difference in view of the world and exposure we have has went up exponential since then. In that way of, I don't, how many people go to church now in Ohuckle?
Not that many.
Not that many. But that's sort of the trend.
Yeah.
Sort of around the world now.
But you can you can see yourself in as part of the story. Like, you can see I'm not just part of the, God's people from Israel all the way here through Europe, through to the conversion of the pagans of Ireland to where I am now. It's like there are smaller narratives. You know what I mean? Anyway, so that's enough about me. Unless have you got any more questions?
No, just even sort of to elaborate on that. I suppose I haven't spoke about my point of view quite yet, but I think I could see myself, if you want to say it as a story, I could see the same thing, like through like evolutionary time. Like, we are part of this. Yes, we're pawns in this game, but we are part of this vast lineage that goes far beyond people.
But
and I can see that, and I feel great amazement in that, and great almost joy in that at the same time. And I feel great about this, and I think it's amazing. Like,
but what's the call of evolution? Where does evolution doesn't progress anything?
Well, what do you mean it doesn't progress anything?
What's the goal?
The goal
you can't
is
progress unless you have a goal. Where are we getting to?
But it's not us. The gene wants to pass on. It almost wants to be immortal. Like, it kind of is. They're immortal coils of replicators, and they want to keep going until, I'm saying want as such, but they will replicate until they can replicate no longer. And
outside of human consciousness, that story doesn't exist. It's not a story. It's a chemical reaction.
But how come then with the Bible and things? Well, I wouldn't say it's a chemical reaction, but how do the stories of religion live outside people too? They don't. It's the same thing.
I suppose
in the same context of that, if the stories we have between
my
people,
worldview, it revolves around being, the origin of being, which would be God. Evolution does not.
But it doesn't. Why does it? It doesn't need to.
Well, yes, no, you've missed the point here.
But
no, hold on a minute. You said we both fit into this worldview where if we don't have conscious beings giving people seeing the story, there's no meaning.
Then there is no meaning.
I'm saying the religious viewpoint has that, and has the concept, the notion of being, consciousness, of meaning.
Yeah.
And in the story, it can have the scientific stories within it.
Yes, I don't disagree.
Science cannot.
Care.
Science doesn't. It's like you've got this big circle, right? Science is a wee circle in that big circle, and that wee circle is looking at that big circle and be like, "See you. I don't need this.
See, I
can find meaning within myself," and it's like there's a contradiction here.
I don't quite see it like that, if I'm honest, but we'll explore that in later episodes, I suppose.
Ben, who are you?
I'm gonna cry. It's my turn now, yeah?
Yeah, it's your turn.
Right, okay. Once upon a time, there was a family called the Thompsons, and they had a bunch of kids, and I happened to be one of them. Okay.
How many kids?
I'm one of 5 boys and 2 girls.
Where are you from?
You're one of two. You're one of 2 girls as well as 5 boys.
Yeah, well, one of 5 sons, and I have 2 sisters. There you go. So yeah, so mine follows the kind of Christian trend until it doesn't. So I basically grew up in a Christian household. It was Reformed Presbyterian church, which is like Presbyterian, only it's like cracked down on the doctrines and the behaviorisms and the mannerisms and the fellowship. Till one day it didn't. For us, till one day it kind of run dry for us, so we didn't feel that God was calling us to that church, so we bounced around churches basically. But I'm not going to talk about that. I talked about that last episode, last episode. But it's about me. So with my story, I I find my call to thinking, we'll call it that, like Josh had this, he was interested in thinking, as he said. I was interested in experience, and I was like, look, if I experience enough things, then I will have enough knowledge, and I can pass it on, and whatnot like that.
What do you mean by
As in, I wanted to just do everything I could possibly do. I wanted, if there's a building that I could somehow jump off, I would do it and survive. I would climb things. I would do things that I wanted to do that would bring extreme exhilaration and
What age?
joy to me. Right from a very young age. Right from a very young age.
Bucket list.
Absolutely.
He had the bucket list at 6.
I was mental. I was completely mental. And then the whole question of faith came in. Like I was a Christian. I would say I was a Christian when I'd say I became a Christian when I turned 11, because I heard a minister say about this story about this guy who died in his bed, and he didn't know where he was going to go, and the person woke up, and and I was just like, what if I die in my bed? Where am I going to go? So I became a Christian when I was 11 years old. Well, that's not when I really became a Christian. I would say that would be the first time I thought I became a Christian. But as I grew older, until I was about 13 and 14, I was like, hang on a minute. That was kind of just like exploiting my fear. It was just like, I didn't really think about it. It was just like, I don't want to go to hell, so I might as well be a Christian, which is fair enough.
Quite a lot of people thinking.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I don't want to go to a bad place, I'll go to a good place. So I didn't really give it much thought, and then one day I did, and it was probably the worst thing I've ever done in my entire life, because what happened from that day on was a complete breakdown in my entire psyche. I wanted to do things that I thought were fun to the point where it just wasn't good for anyone else. It was just me. I became the god of myself. I did things my own way. I didn't offer myself up to any kind of higher authority. And it bit me in the ass one too many times. But at the end of the day, I became more attracted to the atheistic perspective of there is no God, make your own way, be happy kind of vibe. I went to church, always went to church, never stopped. I'd always say, if somebody asked, I was a Christian, and I would be like, oh yeah, I'm a Christian, and I take pride in it. And because of my very strict doctrinal upbringing, I knew my Bible really well. Like by the age of 11, I knew my Bible really well, because I was basically forced to learn it. Not forced to learn it. I learned it willingly from very young age, so I knew my stuff. So anybody who asked me questions about theology and stuff, I had those answers, and they were like, oh wow, you're a very smart young man. But in my heart I was like, nah. It's just the only person ruling me is me. And I do admit to that. And then I came upon this question, who actually cares about me except for me? And then that kind of led me down a kind of rabbit hole of depression and anger issues, because I know my mum cared about me, but she had no reason to. The only reason why she cared about me is because I came out of her at one point. Like, that, it's not real to me. It's just animalistic. And so why is that? Why does my dad care about me? Yeah, I'm his son. I look the most like him. Named after him. But like, there has to be something more. And he's even taking me to church and stuff. And I don't understand why is this thing? Why do my brothers care about me? But pretty much don't like them. We didn't get along. We argued the whole lives, basically, when we were younger. But then when we played hard, basically. We loved each other when we played, but when we argued, we tore each other apart, as brothers go. So I was like, why is this? Why is that? And I'm thinking this, right, when I'm 14 years old. All right, I'm thinking these things, and it was a clash. It was a clash of worlds between the perspective of I care for myself and I'll do what I want to make me happy, and the perspective of science doesn't care about anything. Science isn't going to care about the person who was run over by a car the other day, because science can't care. It's not a logical thinking mechanism.
I think a slight mistake. It's not a worldview science.
No,
it's a tool.
Exactly, it's a tool. Okay, so
we've made progress since our last time.
But I've always had
that.
So science, to me, science could never care about. Because science it doesn't have a moral compass. If you had a dog and you loved that dog, and I decided that I was hungry and I ate that dog, you'd probably kill me because like that's the kind of nature of it. You're like, why would you do that? And I'm like, well, technically, it was my opinion, and I wanted to do what I wanted to do. So
But
you
slight
have
tangent from that,
exactly,
but
yeah.
in some cultures that's okay.
Oh, I know. but,
But-
you see, in the worldview in this country that I was brought up in, obviously it wasn't very nice to eat somebody else's dog. I never did once, okay, but it was a question of morality, and I didn't even know what morality meant at this stage. But I was facing morality issues, and I kind of was just at that moment where literally anything could happen to anyone in the world that could be either so great or so evil, and there's absolutely nobody's obligation to care, because at the end of the day, if we're all just dust and particles, then to dust and particles we will return. And I was just like that, and I remember this very clearly. I sat up all night one night thinking about this, and I was just in tears in the morning that I locked myself into the cupboard, into my wardrobe. And I didn't want anybody I was just this kind of social experiment, and I just stayed there, and I was just sitting there, and I kind of treated it as a joke at first. I was just like, I'm just going to stay here and not go to school, and I'm going to stay here and not go to school, and nobody is obligated to care. And then all of a sudden you had like mum screaming, "Where's Ben?" And you had my other brothers and sisters running to school thinking about where the flip's their brother and all, and that really, really scared me as a kid, that I was causing so much kind of grief to my family. And then basically I started crying, and my mum found me and was like, "What the flip are you doing?" And then I just basically said, "Why am I here? Like, why am I here? Like, and I didn't, obviously, I've never said to my parents, I don't believe in God. I've never said those words.
How old were you at this point?
I was about 14, and I was just like, I've never said that to them, because the whole time that they've really raised me, they've always seen a Christian boy.
Yeah.
Except for those moments where I said things like this. So I took the whole day off school, and I was just chatting to mum the whole time, being like, I don't understand why I have to be here right now. I could be in any point given in time. Why did I have to be me? Why did I have to be now? Why do I have to face issues? Why do I feel pain when I fall? Why can't I fly? Why can't I do all these kinds of things? Like, there's no answer to this. And then mum, obviously being the lovely Christian woman that she is, was very patient with me, and she started counselling and stuff like that. And so she was like, "Oh, good practice." And basically she just giving me these answers like, well, like there's a thing called love, and we basically followed this, where love came from, right up to its core, basically. And in a Christian perspective, God is love.
Yeah.
And when you show love, you show God. And we followed that thread, and I didn't become a Christian there and then, but I started now. In the beginning, it was me.
Change the perspective.
Exactly. It was in the beginning, it was me opening the gates of Christianity to let that kind of idolatry of myself in, but then resulting in this idea that actually if there's so much of this, then why does anybody care about anything if there's no love and stuff? So then that basically filled me up and pushed out all the Christianity. So then the Christianity was outside, and then I was knocking on the door, and then I opened up, and it was slowly going back in with me. But the result of this, with all moving around from church to church and getting these experiences, and just being a kid, just going through school and stuff, you're just like, all right, well, let's go. And I didn't really think about it much until then. But I remember, so my family go out and teach English and stuff in Romania and Ukraine and stuff like that. And I went out to Romania with my family, and I was having very, very hard mental health problems back then, and it got to the stage where I genuinely just had this hate for just someone in the camp there, and I just hated them so much, and it hurt. It actually scared me how much that my anger had, because it was anger issues that I had, and it actually scared me how much anger I let into my heart, how much pain it was causing, and I felt like I was a danger to everyone around me. So I read a book called The Cross and the Switchblade. Very good book. I highly recommend. It's about this guy in America who's a pastor, and he's a pastor, and he has this church in the middle of nowhere in America, and like 5 people go to it. And basically he had this calling to go to New York City, and this is in the 1930s or something, so loads of teenage gangs around.
You read this book, or you wrote this book?
I read this book.
He wrote this book from the perspective of a
like
pastor.
I'm 15 at this stage. I read this book in 3 days, and it's a small wee book, but I read it in 3 days, and it was the Wednesday then of that week. His mum gave it to me at the start of the camp, and man, it changed everything. It was about a man who went to the gangs of New York and was talking to these teenagers my age who were addicted to heroin, who were stabbing everyone they could see for money, who were doing things for pleasure, having sex all the time, and just like doing everything. And these kids were killing themselves. They were basically filling themselves up with things that they wanted to do, like I was, but obviously on a more physical level than a mental level. And just breaking down and collapsing because of it. And this pastor, basically starting from him, built up this community for kids, for teenagers, to get them off the streets, and basically tell them about the Lord Jesus Christ. And you read miracle after miracle in that book, and it's all true, this book. Like, it all actually happened with eyewitnesses and stuff, and people's different accounts and stuff. And there's this moment, I think, and I can't quite remember, but basically they don't have enough money to run it, right? And they basically are like, look, we'll leave it with God's hand. And then the next day, a wealthy person who supported them basically dropped loads of cash for them to basically like redo the whole place much better than before. And like they were like, it was unreal. And I was like, why doesn't God do anything like that in my life? Why isn't there these little dots connecting? I'm a Christian. I get to.
You should see dots connecting.
Yeah, like why isn't God here right now for me? Why isn't it when I get really angry, he doesn't come and soothe me? Why is it that I get really sad, he doesn't come and hold me? Like, I can't feel him anywhere. And I was reading this book, and I mean, I felt something, but I wasn't aware it was God. So I ran out that Wednesday, just overcome with rage at this guy, and I just went into the forest. And usually how I deal with that, I just like broke down into pure tears at this tree, and I was just screaming just out in the night, going, right, Lord, if you're real, please come find me, because I am lost. Please, because I'm so confused. I've been to about 10 churches, all telling me different stuff, all telling me the same stuff. I'm so confused. Please comfort me. Please comfort me. And it's hard to describe this, but he did. And I'm telling you this now. I had this spiritual experience that is the most true thing, as our Josh are sitting next to me right now. I closed my eyes, and my mind was filled as if it was like washed with this glow, all the hatred, all the kinds of collisions of these two worldviews were just swept away, until the one that said me, the one that was on my side, was just a whisper. It was just like, Ben, God's not real. And there was just this huge booming voice in my head. I was just like, I'm here with you right now. And I opened my eyes, and there was the forest, and it was like I saw the forest brand new. I was like, every tree was there for a reason. Every that day, me and my brothers went hiking, and I ran down the hill and I jumped over a snake without even knowing it was a snake. And my brother saw it and he's like, Ben, you literally just jumped over a snake. That would have been you. Like, do you not know what you just did? And I thought about that when I was having this experience, and like that snake was there. It's there for a reason. Josh is there.
What age were you?
I was 15.
15.
And it was this divine moment that everything was where it needed to be for a reason. And then finally I had this kind of clarification that that question I asked my mum, why am I here? I got that answer from reading that book, and basically God telling me that I'm here for a reason. And that's all I needed. And it was that night that I would truly say that I became a Christian, because I truly wanted the evidence. I truly wanted to see what all this was about. And it says in the Bible, and I believe this wholeheartedly, that if you look with all of your heart, that you will find God. And that's what I did. And so from that stage on, yes, I continued sinning like we all do, but I was aware that I was sinning. I wasn't just doing sin as if it was me that whole time. And yeah, loads of other dramatic stuff happened to me, but it wouldn't be me if things weren't dramatic, you know. It was just how it planned out, and I always was where I was meant to be. Everything that I experienced, I now know that God needed me to experience them in order to learn a different lesson than that. And this is why I believe that you can't have a purely scientific outlook at things, because simply for this reason and this reason alone. What we were talking about last week, this idea of value, this idea of why things are where they need to be, you can't understand that in a purely scientific point of view, because science, I could hit Josh, I could punch him in the face right now on camera, and the only people that would care are people with morality. And it's this sense of morality that we Christians defined right from the beginning of what God is. God is the ultimate margin of good, which is how then we can understand what is right and what is wrong. And it's how then that we can know that, you know, we're not ought to do things, but it also lets us understand that that's why God is judge, because he's outside of this idea of good and evil. He is ultimate good. And it kind of wraps up like that. And you struggle with these stories in the Bible that talk about really, really gut-wrenching stuff, like, you know, murder and, you know, horrible things. But you look at it in the grand scheme of things, if you have a God perspective on it, everything that happened in the Bible happened, like Josh said, for every single character in the book. If Josh is looking at himself as like a character in a story, and then I'm looking at the story that was written for everyone then has this value. And it talks about it right in the beginning in Genesis, where he says that we were all made in the image of God. We all have this immense value, immense love, because that's what God is. As I said, God is love, and if we're made in the image of God, we then have that ability to love. In other words, that ability to worship. And it's whatever you worship that defines who you are. So I was worshipping this idea that I wanted to do things my way, and as a lot of people do these days. And, you know, people say, oh, there's nothing wrong with that, but as Christians, it gets to the point where I found out when I was 15 that you get to a point where you just don't care. You become a kind of narcissist and a kind of
that's pretty typical of young men.
Yeah,
15 years of age,
you go.
With the spike in testosterone.
But see, there's always a scientific answer, isn't there? But then again, it's like what you worship. It's what you put value in. Because science could never put value in you. We have to put value in something. Because the only way, let me put this another way. I can only put value in God because God first put value in me. And in the Bible it says we love because God first loved us. That's kind of the answer. In 1 John it says, in the beginning there was God, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And it says that Jesus was the Word. And it's this understanding that Christ, I mean, you can discard everything I'm saying. The point I'm trying to make is that because Jesus, right? So I got to the point where God is God, right? That's in my mind, that is a fact, and that cannot be disproven to me. Okay? And then we get to Jesus, and the only reason why I'm saying about Jesus is because he is my savior, in which I trust wholeheartedly in him, and because of the historical records and everything that happened, where he actually lived and stuff and did what he did, that then is enough evidence to satisfy why I believe what I believe. On top of my faith, it's not by faith alone I've been saved, but it's not by faith alone I'm a Christian. You know, I'm a Christian because of the evidence, because of my experiences,
the evidence,
because of the people I meet, people like Josh, because of people like Carl. All these people who are thinking the exact same things as me because of this one book, because of this great book that are telling them these different things, and then looking at a world that has been shaped from this book well before any of us were born.
Yeah,
it's a huge and impactful thing. And you said there, it's like there's all these different, different things that happen from 1800s or so. That the view of the world has changed. Yeah, the view of the world has changed, but it's not a one view. That's why Christians don't care about the view of the world. Christians don't care about what the world thinks.
But morality has changed since then.
The point I'm saying is a Christian does not give a toss about what the world is going to do and where the world is going, because we already know the answer to that. A Christian gives a toss.
But what is your answer to that?
A Christian only cares about the person to their left or to their right in their present time. A Christian is where they need to be, because that's where they believe God needs to be. So for example, right now, as a Christian, I believe that my most important priority is you.
Yeah.
And obviously my faith, and it says in the Bible to be constant in prayer. And believe me when I'm telling you this, the whole time I've been speaking, I have been praying, like, just, Lord, give me these words. Okay, and I'm sure Josh will be like, yeah, he is. But as Christians, we're to be called to be, present-minded and not to worry and cast our burdens onto the Lord. Because if we were to take on the weight of the world, we would obviously collapse.
Do you feel like a messenger a little bit? Not in a bad way, but that's your purpose of life, to be the messengers of these things, no?
Because, like, think about this. Tell me this. If you had a brother, right? Do you have a brother?
I have a sister.
Okay, your sister. Okay, you obviously care loads for your sister.
Yeah,
obviously, it's family. It's an unbreakable bond. You obviously want your sister to be safe.
Well, it should be unbreakable, but
as Christians, we tend to feel that bond to people who we end up getting close to, and we want them to feel safe. And as Christians, all we can offer them is the salvation in Jesus Christ. Yeah. Because I could offer you, a good wee game on the Xbox, and that'll relieve some pain. I could take you out for a wee beer and stuff, and those are all temporary. I like to call them temporary heavens. It's like a moment of peace and a moment of joy and a moment of worship, but it doesn't ever last, because there's always going to be a problem that comes up.
Slightly different terminology, but I agree.
You get me? Because would you agree life is searching for those kinds of temporary heavens until you find a kind of right one? Or
that could be a good name for a drink.
Temporary heaven. I'll knock your socks off.
Homebrewed pint by Josh.
It's just methylated spirits. Like, you're blacked out. Like,
I just more envisioned like
temporary heaven.
A lovely pint of like nice Irish lager that is glowing, and I mean glowing, like it is a void pure in space, and it's pure light.
Staring into it gets you off your head.
Well, there's a way. I won't speak for very long. You can continue after. There's a way you can think about it, and I'm sure you could, as a Christian man, you can back me up if you want. But as you said, these so-called temporary heavens, or like the sort of earthly sort of
manifestations,
earthly pleasures, so to speak.
See, the term
they're a lot better when they're put in the right place, and if they're not put in place of the whole, if that makes sense. So, for example, just a really simple example: alcohol. Okay, alcohol's great. Okay, but if you frame alcohol as if alcohol is the thing, we're getting together because of the alcohol. It's like, well, you've turned something good and turned it into something very bitter, very quickly, and it's it's very sad. And like Ireland is a perfect example for bad drinking habits, and if you're pro alcohol or against alcohol, it's just manifestation of one thing. You can't use alcohol properly. That makes sense. Because if you drink in Ireland, a lot of the time you drink. You drink to get drunk here. That's the drinking culture here.
Yeah.
There is no
way.
having alcohol with your dad. Have a pint with your dad, and that was it. There isn't that culture over here, really.
Well,
that I've experienced anyway. But
I would
generally speaking,
with having a pint,
but
that would be the time I would have a pint. Would be me and my dad have a good chat, have a beer or two, watch a game of football. And
but that's a good. Let me finish, please. That's a good place for alcohol, but it's in addition to something that's greater. It's serving something greater.
So exactly. So what I'm saying is, if we have to take those little perspectives, those little tiny heavens, okay, those temporary heavens of having a pint with your dad watching the game.
Yeah.
All right. Like, that's class. The feelings that you have is class. You obviously feel joy and happiness and stuff, all right? And that's a temporary solution, okay? So when you zoom out, we're asking the question of what's the permanent solution. When you say earthly pleasures, when I say the word earthly, people think, oh, it's just of earth, or it's like, oh, what we just do. Earthly means temporary, and heavenly means eternal. So I'm not offering the Christian story is not a solution to your thirsts for temporary heavens on earth. It's, you're going to endure your problems, but there's going to be this heavenly, this eternal solution to all of them. In fact, that solution's already passed. That was when Jesus came to the earth, and he stood trial, and he bore our sins in his sacrifice in a culture that denied him. And from that then, and through his love, we call ourselves Christians. We call ourselves God's people. And we learn from God's word. Everything we do is God-centered. So it sounds simple to say, but obviously, like you say, we always people say we obviously fall into sin. Like as you said last week, everybody's done something wrong in their life, and nobody's ever going to be perfect. Solution is to, as we said last week, to rid of evil, and I believe we had a very good discussion last week on that God on trial. What gives God the right?
God the power.
Yeah. Well, the reason why God is the power is because, in my opinion, and I'm just a 20-year-old guy who has just ordinary experiences, and I happen to be saved. God to me has the power because he had the power to take it away. The Lord, it says in Job, is it Job? The Lord gives and the Lord taketh. The Lord gives and the Lord takes away. Blessed be the Lord.
But I suppose sidetrack, and we'll sort of discuss it more in later episodes and things, but you can't, that's like, in my opinion, it's like, if I create a child with a woman and we both want to kill it, why can't we? We created it.
Well, yeah.
And that's that kind of thing I just don't understand quite. Because you created it doesn't give you...
Because you create, right, it's a very good question. If you create something, it doesn't give you the right to kill it 100%, because that person has value.
Yeah,
that thing has infinite value. A pet has infinite value.
Yeah.
If let's go back to the dog thing. Like, if you loved, even if the owner loved his dog very much, and then the dog ended up dead, and it was because the owner killed it. Even people who never knew the dog or the owner or anything about them would hate the owner so much.
Yeah, of course.
And it's these questions that we love to discuss and think about, because it's what gives what gives us that drive to value something like that. Why do we value that dog? Why do we value that baby?
Yeah, 100%. I just sort of then expand on that though, but for me, why do we then not value the rock? A rock? Why can we break it apart? Why do we not value parasites that we continually want to kill?
Why do we say don't be stupid to a kid that befriends a rock?
Yeah, like,
You know,
because then what gives it no meaning, and then what gives the dog meaning?
Let's
Why do you
change-
want to kill? Why do you want to kill the coronavirus, but you don't want to kill your dog? Like, or you don't want to kill the neighbor?
you've
Do you
just
know?
exploded his brain right
Do you know
now.
what I mean? Though,
So
like,
let's
I am making that a quote.
we'll
There's
change. We'll
nothing you
change.
need to stop me.
We'll change the dog, right? Right. Okay. Scenario here. A wee girl, right, is walking with her dad, and she picks up a rock that she thinks looks really cool, and there's like a wee fossil in it and stuff, and maybe you can see a bit of like, you know, a little bit of quartz or whatever, and it's veiny, and it looks really cool. Because I when I was younger, I used to look at rocks.
Yeah.
And he named the rock Steve. Okay, so
Steve,
this
yeah.
rock is no longer a rock. This rock, forth will be known as Steve.
Yep.
Okay. And she goes home with her dad and they have lunch, and then she goes, "Dad, can Steve sit at the table? Can Steve come for lunch?" And Dad's like, "Yeah, sure, of course Steve."
Set
can come
as
for
a
lunch."
loose term with a rock.
Aye. And so they're sitting at they're sitting at the dinner table, and Steve, the girl, and the dad are all eating, and the dad's thinking, "This is great. This is hilarious. You know, it's good banter." You know, and then a week goes by, all right, and Steve's gone. Steve's now got to school, right? She's put Steve in a wee school
Yeah.
pocket, and she's showing all her friends Steve. Some of her friends mock her, and some of her friends laugh at her. But then some of her other friends go, "Oh, it's really cool. I find a rock too. You know, I call it Barbara." You know what I mean? Because kids are like that, right?
Yeah.
All right. But then it's home time, okay? And then she quickly gets her backpack on, and she runs out to meet her dad. And then her dad goes, "Where's Steve?" And then she goes in her pocket, and Steve's not there. She looks in her other pocket. Steve's not there. She's like, "I've lost Steve. Oh no!" And the dad's reaction is, "Oh no, we'll get another one." But that just breaks the girl's heart. She's like, "No, I want Steve." Okay, now what should the father do? Should the
Steve.
father go back into the school and be like, "Hi, I'm looking for a rock called Steve, and my daughter is missing it." All right, or should the father like say, "Right, come on, it's just a rock. We can get you a new one, but at the end of the day, it's just a rock." If it was me, I would go into the school, okay, and I would look for the rock, and she probably just left it on her table, and so she did. All right, boom. All right, Steve's back home, okay. But eventually, the child's gonna realize that Steve is just a rock.
Yeah.
All right, okay. So, is there anything wrong with that story?
I don't see that.
No, absolutely not. It's a lovely little
Yeah,
story
it's normal,
about
yeah.
3 characters. But the only reason why the third character, Steve, is a character is because the narrator made it so.
Yes, she wanted to name it
No,
Steve.
I made it so. I made that story completely up.
Yeah.
That's the story I made. I own that story.
Yeah.
It's completely made up.
Mhm.
Okay? And I obviously want it to be good. I don't want to make a story that's just sad. I don't want to say, "Nah, the dad just said, shut up, stupid child, it's just a rock." You'd think, right, that's a bit harsh.
Yeah.
Okay? God, to me, is my narrator. And he allows me, through my gifts and my abilities, to go and, like, just value things, you know, value different rocks, create different Steves, do different things, all right? Because God, his whole purpose for us, right, was to go and, like, live and create in his name and to, like, you know, just do what we do, but just, like, avoid the evil stuff. But obviously, we can't be programmed as robots. We always have to have a kind of a free choice, you know? The same way, like, if I said to you, right,
Free
you
will
can-
is an illusion.
free will is an illusion. If I said to you, right, you can do what you want in this room, right, just don't open that present,
Yeah.
okay? And you look at the present and you're like, haha, and you have a few beers or something and you open it and stuff, right? You have the free choice to respect me and not open the present, which decent people would do.
Yeah.
But then, like, you obviously have the one jackass who would open the present, all right? But, like, imagine I set you in an environment where, like, what's the metaphor I like to use? I think I told
Chess?
you. No. Let's pretend you have a crush on this, or some like, okay, scenario. This really, really rich guy that could give a girl the world has fallen in love with this girl, okay? But the girl doesn't really see him the same way and thinks he should just be a friend, and so she friend zones him, okay? Now, question: should the guy pursue the girl, or love her enough to let her go, respect her decision and let her go?
We should respect, obviously.
Exactly, that's what God does for us. He respected our decision that we didn't see God the same way, even though he could offer us the world, eternity, heaven. We decided to turn our back on him. But if you turn your back on the ultimate margin of good, the only other way to go is evil. You know what I mean? It's like an open doorway. If you turn your back on the open doorway to riches and goodness and happiness, the only other way is despair, gloom, and sadness.
But just sort of throughout the animal kingdom and stuff, and things that don't appreciate culture, I get we kind of evolve in 2 levels, and not many animals do that. But through, say, lions and stuff, why then do they kill their cubs? Like, it's not their cubs, but they'll go into a pride, often non-related cubs, and kill them all. Like, I see that as evil.
Yeah.
And why is that a creation
because
of
lions
God?
don't have a moral compass. Lions
But
aren't
why
created in
is
the
that
image
a
of God.
creation of God? Like, why
But
has he made this in the
lions
first
and
place?
animals are not created in the image of God. Only
But why?
mankind were
But
created
that-
in the image of God.
I see that as extremely
Because we were made to look
self-centered,
after them.
and we're just. But why have we came yesterday and have in time of the world? Like, why have we came in the past 250,000 years and just popped out now and let everything else wreak havoc for the other 13.7 billion years? Why have we came to save the world?
But would you agree
yesterday?
if we wiped humanity off the face of the world would be saved?
Yes,
Okay.
100%.
Okay.
We
so
are the
does that
parasite.
not make you a bit of a psychopath?
No. No. I
Okay,
can see
so-
the damage we're doing to the world and how
So
we have over.
you see lions killing
You fit
cubs.
that into your own human narrative.
Yes, because I see us sort of where we have went too far. Well, I'm saying too far, but it's like we, instead of meeting the niche of the environment, we have made the environment our niche.
Exactly.
We, through agriculture has been the boom. Once we got agriculture to go, anywhere in this planet was habitable.
Okay. So
Besides the poles
that
and things
perspective
like
that you have of humanity as a cancer to the earth is a godlike perspective.
Then why are we
Because
here
God
to
has
save it?
that perspective.
But then why are we here to save it if we're a cancer?
We're not here to save it.
But we
can't
Jesus-
save it because we're the cancer.
But then why were we created? Why would he create the cancer?
Because so at the very beginning,
I-
my mum told me that God was love.
Yeah.
God didn't make human beings so that we could love him. I don't love God because I was created to love God. God created us so that he could love us. But like I said, he's just like the guy that had that crush on the girl. Okay?
But-
He pursues us. Okay? And we have to find it in ourselves to love him back. Because if we say no, all that there is destruction.
But I don't, because I see it then before we became a thing, and
Ah, yes, no, I understand.
animals love things as well. They love, like your dog has the true capability of love.
Mm.
And why then did we need to come in and play this role of the cancer and start to destroy things?
Because
Why were we then created if we were the
so is God
exception?
destroying things or is humanity destroying
humanity
things?
is destroying things?
Okay, there you go. Because if God, to me, God is nature. Okay, I see God wherever I see a tree. Okay, because that's enough evidence for me.
If I just point out, you've got a massive, like, weird circular reason thing going on here, and it's very hard to notice. You've got humanity's cancer, but it's only cancer through the eyes of humanity.
Yes, because we're the ones that can actually comprehend what we're doing.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
we
so
are.
as
you're,
we
Christians-
are.
you're posing your.
But
Is it objective that we're a cancer to the world,
I would.
or is it based in your own human intuition?
No, I would say it's objective. Yes.
Objective,
No, I would say it's subjective.
subjective.
Yes, because I believe that. And,
Right.
But I
that's
believe that
not-
with evidence illustrating
But
that.
if it's subjective, by definition, if all the people who thought humanity was a cancer were wiped out, humanity would no longer be a cancer anymore.
No, we wouldn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't. I
So
don't
it's
see the.
it's like it's a claim with there's no
But if we were here to.
there's no weight behind it.
Well, I don't understand, but I think. I suppose we're going down a rabbit hole here. But
Yes. Do you
we'll
want
go
to
down.
do you want to explain your
Yes,
side of things?
'cause-
We're never gonna get.
The Bible's filled with unfalsifiable claims.
Do you want to explain
Which is-
your backstory?
Yeah.
Thank you very much
Yeah.
for listening to the Ben segment.
Yeah. So my name's Kyle. I grew up.
John, a wee bit closer because I need to crank it again.
Hello, we hear that. My name's Kyle. I grew up in East Belfast. As far as
East Belfast.
East Belfast,
Hey.
yeah. I have a little sister and I've my mum and dad, obviously. And then it's as far as I can remember, I love nature and animals. I remember, like, as a child, lining up, going to the early learning centre and getting animals and lining them up from, like, my living room right up to my room. I had so many and naming them all. And, like, my mum sort of, I suppose, tells a story of me in nursery. I think it was the teacher, like, put an image of a lemur on the board and said it's a monkey. And I was like, it's a ring-tailed lemur, miss.
Julian.
And and she was like, well, what's going on? So I sort of, from that, like, why is
This teacher.
a
did not-
4-year-old telling me I'm wrong right now? But then from that, I sort of just loved animals. I loved, like, crocodiles. I don't know if you watch that.
When I
Steve
was
Irwin.
really young, I knew like so many specific types of dinosaurs.
Dinosaur. That's
Yes.
And I knew all the names.
Exactly.
And I'm like,
It's just a fascination, kids.
I don't know
have.
how I don't know it now.
Or I had a
know it
volcano
now.
sort of thing. Like,
Yeah.
I could have got 6 out of 6
No,
marks
I
in a
was-
geography essay at 5
No.
and then not get it in my GCSE.
I was addicted to dinosaurs, diggers, and Lego. That was it.
Yeah.
That was it. But yeah, go on.
Well, so I loved animals quite a lot. Regarding Christianity, both my parents were brought up in Christian households. I don't know how. My granda, my mum's dad, he was from a Brethren family. Then they would have went to church, and my mum had to go to Sunday school and stuff growing up, and then I had to go to Sunday school growing up. I went to several different churches. I went to a Presbyterian, I went to a Salvation Army, and I've just throughout life I sort of went to different churches at different times depending who I was with. I played like football on a Friday with quite a lot of Christian people, and I loved it. And I remember, like, even on debates in, like, primary school, like, I would have defended God and, like, rhymed off all these quotes and
Casual
stuff.
debates in primary school. Oh my God,
And, like,
yeah.
and I just thought, and I was like, tell my parents it's wrong to smoke because you're damaging yourself, and God doesn't want you to damage yourself.
Your body is a temple.
And all this, yeah. And as I sort of grew up, I kept my love of, like, animals, and then it was very hidden to me, and I sort of did, like, question God a wee bit through, like, is this stuff actually true? What are the actual evidence of this? Sort of even when I was 12 and 13. And then I remember being told in church that there's no happiness without the Bible. And I went home and thought so much about, like, but if, yes, like, I thought quite a lot in the sense of, but if you only live your life through the scope of the Bible, like, what else is there? And I just sort of questioned quite a lot, where's the evidence for this? And because it's fulfilling for you doesn't make it true. And I just thought quite a lot, they kind of hid evolution through school. You're kind of indoctrinated quite badly, I felt, throughout life to feel God's way. And then I remember I would have said I'm an atheist roughly in 5th year, because I was like, there's not enough, I can't find the evidence for it enough more point of view. But I was only atheist in the point of view of, like, an absence of a belief in God. I was always willing to be wrong, and I still am willing to be wrong. But in that term, I'm agnostic. But I feel like if you're truly atheist, and even if there's proof of God and you deny it, like, I feel like that's sort of what the Christians do a little bit. But I sort of, if there's proof of it, 100%, I'll hold my hands up and say I'm wrong. However, I'm agnostic, but the probability suggests that it's not true. And through our scope of what we understand of
How
the
old
world,
were you when you sort of deconverted, so to speak?
I would say, like, 5th year was kind of when I was like, I actually thought about it, like, properly, because I went in the limbo.
5th year
of
was
not-
mad for us, like.
Yeah, no, because I was sort of like, I would have been like
was
Chris.
that, like 16.
Yeah, like 15, 16 in the, but it went through, like, I would have been really Christian, then it sort of died out, and I just didn't care. I didn't think. I wasn't, to be honest, I didn't really try in school that much. I did okay in my GCSEs, but not exceedingly well or anything. I just did what I had to do. And then I remember in my driving test, once I passed my test, and Robert, who was my driving instructor, he was quite a devoted Christian. And I remember sitting in my car and talking to him about it. And he said, I don't know about, and I was just like, what? I was like, because I talked to him a bit about evolution and what his point of view from it was. And to be honest, I was quite naive of evolution at this stage. I just kind of knew it's how we went from sort of basic life to complexity.
Yeah.
And he said,
Who was this?
my driving instructor.
This was Robert, Josh. Pay attention.
Yeah, and he said, you may have came from monkeys, but I know I didn't.
Right.
And even at the time, and in my basic understanding, I was like, but we didn't come from monkeys. We came from the same ancestors as monkeys. So we're like, what?
They look like
And
monkeys.
I was just like, that's such a naive.
4-year-old ringtail lemur sort of mind.
Yeah,
kicked
it
in.
was just like, what? And then I went to university, and then I actually learned about evolution for the first time. And I was like, why has this been hidden for so long? Like, they speckle it in the A level of biology and the GCSE, like speckle it in.
So
And,
you only learned about evolution
at the
in
proper
university.
intricacies of evolution and how genes properly work and stuff, yeah.
When you say the proper intricacies, what level would that be?
Well, to actually understand how genes, and like you would have learned like the DNA structure and stuff, which is sort of what genes are, like, or sort of so what genes are is the like fundamental unit of evolution. And it's sort of when we from, say, when you have your parents will put half your mother's genes and then half your father's genes into you, and the fundamental unit is the gene in which it is unlikely to be broken. It's small enough chain of DNA that is unlikely to be broken and can code for like a trait, or in part for a trait. If it's too large, it's likely to then be broken, and then it isn't the unit anymore.
Yeah.
So just sort of then, so I'm gonna have this one. Learning about that, and it sort of explained why life looks the way it does to me, in not needing a creator for it.
Okay, well, I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
You're sitting in this house. Is there evidence of a builder?
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's how I feel when I sit in the world and nature. There's evidence of a creator.
But our creator is evolution.
But how though? Like, because do you know a guy called Professor James Tour?
James, no.
Right, so he's he's like a microbiologist, and he studies like the smallest, like
A virologist.
yeah, something like that. But and he, like, basically you cannot create the start point
But
of us all.
you
Cannot.
can.
But how? Because
Well,
if you created the start point, would it not just start?
Well, the Urey-Miller experiment, 1952, showed that you can create what we would class as the foundation of life building blocks from non-life. So
But
from
has
like
life come from it?
yes. So what happened? There was maybe nitrogen, there was oxygen, there was phosphorus, and under the sort of conditions, so what they simulated was the conditions thought of the origin of life 4.5 billion years ago, of sort of like basically like hell, like the earth was very hot at this time, and you can spontaneously form nucleic acids, which are the building blocks. Nucleic acids and amino acids. So the building blocks of protein, and nucleic acids are the building blocks of a replicator. And so off these then nucleic acids that were formed, they would have just formed spontaneously, died,
But
formed
what's
spontaneously.
in amino acids and nucleic acids?
So they would have been formed from inorganic molecules, such as hydrogen, phosphorus.
So hydrogen and phosphorus,
But not
created
just-
amino acids.
Yes, they can then. So you can get life from non-life. At this
See,
point,
that-
and then
amino
that
acids is not life though. Is it? Amino acids is not.
is not life. But then the building blocks of an amino acid, the ones that then amino acids would have been created, died. But then what about the one that can be then created, and then it's parted into two, and then two into four? So it's starting to replicate, and that's the foundation of the first replicators.
They're replicating, but they're still the same They're still amino acids, or what?
Yes, well, that's what we are. That's the building blocks of us. We are just a bunch of replicators representing certain traits, and we're the vehicle of that.
Right.
So then we have went from. So what sort of? We went from the basic replicator, and we just had sort of a soup of replicators, if you want to say the oceans is that. And eventually, when the replicators were able to build more complex, they went from sort of micro molecules into macromolecules. They started to form peptides when they chained together, then macropeptides, and then proteins. And then proteins started to get together to actually make some kind of tissues. This took billions and billions of years. And it wasn't until 565, I think it was, million years ago, when we had the Cambrian explosion, which was the oxygen levels on the Earth changed, and we had this boom of life. Like we had never seen it before. The boom of all these different invertebrates. And that, from that moment, they have sort of the first true invertebrates in the ocean. And then from the invertebrates, they started to form the chordates. And the chordates are the things which have the first backbones, which we would say are the vertebrates.
You would then, so you place, this is the building blocks of life, basically. This is how we all came to be.
Yeah, so from the simplicity to the complexity.
Why should you tell me to care about that?
You don't have to if you don't want to, and many people don't.
See, there's
there's nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely nothing wrong with it. But that's the thing.
But that's how it came to be.
I don't have to care about anything that's ever being said to me, but I want to, obviously.
Yeah.
Because it's a decent thing.
Because
just to let you know, I do care what you're saying.
Yeah, no, 100%.
But the thing about spirituality is that it's a deep care for things. It's a deep understanding. It's a deep value. It's to place value and morals into something that cannot have possibly... A moral compass cannot possibly have been a result of chemical reactions. Morality cannot possibly be a result of that, because if so, then we would all have to be able to share. We do all share the same moral compass.
We do, yes.
We are totally gonna go on to a new episode if we're gonna.
Yes, but sort of we'll go down that rabbit hole a different time. But then sort of the complexity of that then raised into the first vertebrates. And then at the end of this chain, if you want to say we are the pinnacle,
that's the kickstarting of evolution,
and that's us. But then I started to understand that a bit more, and then through maybe second year university, I had another right. I need to.
You had a Cambrian explosion.
I needed. It was right. I've got a very science point of view on things, and I read The Selfish Gene. I read The Extended Phenotype and The Blind Watchmaker and stuff by Dawkins, and then I was but I need to start to see the bridge it to the philosophy side. That's where science is a tool, but then philosophy is a tool. But I think philosophy's been taken hostage by theology quite heavily. But then I read a wee bit of Daniel Dennett, who was quite influential, Steven Pinker, and then Sam Harris. I sort of read them in second, third year. And then I rounded off my sort of moral view a bit, and how you don't need a, to be moral, you don't need a God. And I think it's actually...
Oh, no, I do agree with that.
If we take our morals from the Bible, and especially the Quran, there's major issues, and we don't, and we shouldn't.
No, I do agree with you. You don't need a God to be moral.
And
all right? The whole prospect of freedom of choice and freedom of will is you don't need your mom and dad to be around you every time to make your tea. You can do it yourself. You have the ability to do it yourself.
In many countries,
that doesn't mean it's not there though.
Yeah, but then many countries in the world and stuff, due to religion, you don't have these luxuries, which is its own issue.
In Western civilization, it was all entirely built on the workings of the Bible, and we are the most advanced where we have been is because of the judicial system that was built on the...
Well, we think we're the most advanced. We're not really necessarily.
Where's Wakanda?
But especially in the Middle East and stuff, what goes on is horrific, and that is done in the light of Allah, and that is done in the light of a religious view. And I think if we're taking morality from things like that, like what?
Yeah.
Did you say Western civilization isn't the most advanced civilization?
Not necessarily. That is
And
against.
technologically speaking.
It's not like through China. Like we get everything from China. How dare we live in our own wee bubble and say we're underneath them technologically?
Okay,
have you seen videos of
the roadmap of science? Okay,
But that's because we're saying science. How much Chinese literature do we read? None. We don't know what they know
They don't
because there's a big divide, and we've created this partly through
this is gonna be a massive
religion.
tangent.
Yeah,
this one
but then once I sort of second year sort of did that quite a bit, then I sort of just got knuckled down into like my science work, like through doing my third year and then my masters.
And then you ended up here.
And then I've had a wee bit of a gap of time between my PhD and, well, so between my PhD, before I start my PhD, I was just sort of learning. I enjoy like data science and things now, and I'm just trying to learn that quite a bit. And then we started talking about it when we first met in work, and I was like, you know what, I'll delve back into this realm again and sort of explore the ideas and talk about it. And I can see ultimately, like, there's great fulfillment in being a Christian. It doesn't mean you're a bad person, also doesn't mean you're a good person. And I don't think, before I would have been like, you're wrong. But I'm not the...
I'd love to see that, Kyle.
Yeah, but I'm not the person to say that you're wrong because it's unfalsifiable. Yeah, but it is unfalsifiable. But to me, anything made based on unfalsifiable claims isn't a good argument. That's not how we do things. And anything that's endorsed without evidence, like even Christopher Hitchens, I know he's not the biggest fan of religion and stuff, but he is true when he says if something can be endorsed without evidence, surely it can be dismissed without evidence. And I don't...
But then again, it's where you see your evidence. That's what I talked about, the builder. The house we're in, there's evidence of a builder. So the same way...
Yes, but I explained the complexity. So we have got the builder of the evolution.
I didn't explain the complexity. It's like... no, hold on, Matt. No, you didn't explain the complexity. It's like if Ben says this house has evidence of a builder by its existence being a house, and you start explaining it's made of bricks and plaster.
Yeah, and then we break it down into the chemicals.
But yeah, that's not...
But you're playing
you didn't
God...
explain the house.
But the house is a bunch of bricks that holds shelter.
Yeah, but it's not. You can say a builder built those the house.
Yeah,
out of the
which
bricks,
he did.
Right. Yeah, and you irrefutable to say otherwise, right?
Yeah.
But to say, oh well, no, you see, the builder didn't build the house. Because we've got bricks and it's got trusses, got wooden beams, got nails.
Yeah, and
it's like
they made that bit.
It's like you're not talking about the same
So
thing.
what was the builder of evolution? What kicked it off?
The replicator, the spontaneous arisement of a replicator.
A replicator.
And, right. Well, so you have to just assume the chemical structures existing in the physical.
But you're playing God of the gaps here. I appreciate greatly we don't understand everything. We know nothing.
But you're framing as if that's the answer.
But I'm saying that is our thought of the answer. I don't see. I'm not 100% exactly where nitrogen stuff came from, but they do exist in the universe.
But it's not even to the point where nitrogen came from anywhere. It doesn't matter where it came from. It's like the fact that nitrogen can exist, and not only it's nitrogen. It's not just it's not a sea of potentiality. It's nitrogen, a stable structure. And and not only is it a structure, we can define it as a structure. What is a structure? What's a structure made of? It had to exist for nitrogen to exist. What is a structure?
But it's the organization of something that's stable.
Yes,
you can't organize something from chaos. That's what I'm getting.
No, here's the thing. Kyle.
Do.
We, from our conscious experience, can identify ordered structure. How can there be, by definition, how can something be ordered?
But we
and
give
structured? Yes.
But we give definitions. But
yes,
we're delving in.
But the existence of nitrogen or any other chemical, right, that is stable in its composition, its
Yeah.
physical composition, does not depend on if I think it has a stable.
It does have a stable, yeah. It
Yeah,
doesn't matter what you think.
It doesn't depend what I think.
Yeah, it doesn't.
But you're saying we give the value, we give the structure. It's coherent if I think it's coherent.
Not that
or
we
not.
give, but we have then observed it and we have quantified.
Yes.
Described this word as structure, and we have said that it is stable. But that's the best we
What
can
is a
describe
structure?
it. It's I would say the structure is something, but then something would be
It has to,
chaotic
mind
in
you,
structure.
a structure has to, for nitrogen to exist, okay,
Yeah.
and for nitrogen, assuming nitrogen is structured, which we'd agree nitrogen is structured, or else we wouldn't call it nitrogen. We would call it something. Just
We
chaos,
would call
right?
it the smallest unit that then becomes
We'd
structured.
call it the Toa Habua, however the
We would call it a
old
bunch of quirks. And
archaic term is. But anyway, we've got structured atom here.
yeah.
It's coherent. It's got a structure. Okay. You've assumed structures exist, objectively speaking. Okay.
Yeah, but then it
What
wouldn't
is a
have existed.
structure?
But it wouldn't have existed before that. I don't know.
It-
We may know as science what was before
Therefore,
that, but I don't.
when you say it's God of the gaps, it's like it's not God of the gaps. It's God of
But it,
the realm of where things exist.
no, but you're saying we don't understand it, and science is expanding. And
It's
we're
not like
uncovering.
I don't know understand it yet. I'm saying in my worldview, this argument makes sense.
In mine, it doesn't.
Yes,
Because
I know,
we will
because you're not because
we
you've got
will
the wrong
explain
worldview.
it.
That's
Yeah.
why. That's why.
Because we're like,
That's why we're here.
to me, we're uncovering things we don't know all the time. To be like the evolution of the universe and things like
Okay.
we don't 100% know. I know a lot of physicists can say from like a millisecond after
Okay.
we can explain.
If I were to draw you a big circle and I asked you,
Should we?
Do you want to wrap up? Yeah.
Because we're
Okay. Yeah.
Kyle was bragging a sweat there. Okay, so that's why.
No, but
Right.
we can keep going on this episode if
No,
you
wait,
want.
we'll cut this.
I just thought episode 0.
yeah, this.
I just
To
Can
be
we-
fair, we
can
haven't
we
thought
end-
about what we
can
want
I-
to discuss.
can we-
we
end
went
on-
much longer than I thought we were going
Yeah,
to.
can we end on this one thing? If I were to draw a big circle and that circle was all the knowledge in the world, to know
Yeah.
everything in that circle, you knew everything, how much would you colour in to say how much you know?
Like you couldn't see it.
You couldn't see it, so you're talking a little dot.
A
There's
speck.
that much left to discover.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's where we'll end it. Thank you
But
so
we
much.
still need to discuss what we'll talk in future episodes.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Which was
Blast them out. We've got a few things here. Belief by faith versus evidence. Adam and Eve dogma, and should we teach it to children? Morality without religion. What is religion / religious language? Do we choose to be religious? Science, meaning and truth. What is meaning? Science presupposes meaning and truth. XYZ. Why can't God just simply remove evil? The evidence of Jesus and his divinity. Why did Jesus have to come as a human 2,000 years ago? We don't go to the genes / atoms if we are. I wrote this, bear in mind. We'll skip that one. Why Christianity and not any other religions? Was religion created by people, for people? Can we create meaning? Is there meaning outside of consciousness? Why does / can God judge? Then we go into the flood and hell. Why is there so much killing in the Bible? How to grasp an author of the universe?
Okay.
Did he just
we
say
get it.
You get the idea.
We
You
get
get
the idea.
a bit of Brett Weinstein too. I quite like his work
Brett
on this.
Weinstein, metaphorical truth, symbolic truth, and why Brett
Ja-
Weinstein is wrong.
James Tour, Frank Tourette, Jeff Durbin. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
That's the talk.
I think that's good.
Thanks very much for
Wait for
listening.
the camera. If it's still on.
Yeah.
I don't think, is it on?
It's
Oi!
Yes, boys. It's been great being on. I've very interesting. I do want to modify how I see the world, and this does help things.
Fantastic.
Because I think even both. But my one thing, and I think it takes time to appreciate, it's like we do look at the world in different planes. It's how do we start to actually comprehend it a little bit better of both of our sides. And I think that I can't say you're wrong, you can't say I'm wrong. That's the beauty of this. And that's where I
Yeah.
think with sort of the new atheist point of view, when they're coming in a wee bit like too harsh in the sense, yes, they've the right to critique things in like Islamic countries, and they've the right to critique sort of the dismissal of reason and stuff, but they they come out and say that you're actually wrong. It's unfalsifiable in my eyes, so they can't actually do that. But however, I believe in what probabilities suggest, and I'm more than happy to do it. To say that I can't be happy without God and stuff, I think's completely wrong. And I've got a good worldview of how I don't need any like religion and stuff. But as I always say, like, if it was to manifest itself, like, I would then believe,
like it did for me.
yeah. But we'll discuss that more after.
Yeah.
But,
What do you want?
like-
What do you want to name this series?
I reckon this is 3 episodes. One for called Josh, Ben, and Kyle.
No,
Um,
I don't know. You mentioned offhand, what the scientist, philosopher, and the guy watching or something stupid like that. Are you happy with that?
wait,
how
what
about the scientist, the philosopher, and the
And the Eejit.
Eejit? Yeah,
And the what? Sorry, the who?
the Eejit.
No, what did you say before that?
I was gonna say, and a bit of both.
Bit of both. No.
No, that sucks.
Right. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye, people.